Hello and welcome back to Kerbol Space Program, the still horribly named series. Which I didn't say the series name. I'm great at this. So, still post commentary, still some issues there. I grabbed the contract before recording, 2 contracts in fact, to do mystery goo observations. Again, do a mystery goo while flying over Kerbin and while flying high over Kerbin as well. So I started designing a new pod with 2 mystery goo capsules, and I decided to have a science junior and a magnetometer. And there's sort of a secondary goal in this mission of landing in the desert. It's easy to do while going into orbit, and there's quite a bit of science to gain there. And so if we can get there, we can get science to actually start setting up a probe network. Now, we have EVAs off of the surface now, so we can get orbital EVAs, so that'll also be an important part of this mission. And here, of course, I realized, wait, I've already got rockets that do this exact same thing. I'll go pick one of those. I did try updating my KW rocketry. It didn't. The community fixes mess with the engine fairings. I'm not sure why. I removed the specific fairing patch, but it still was making engine fairings not appear. So here I just switched out one of the Science Juniors for a magnetometer boom, and I sort of forgot this was a more outdated version, and I didn't have the AVR8s, the winglets at the bottom, so I was steering entirely by gimbaling and, well, torque. So, the launch wasn't as smooth as I would have liked, but we'll get to that. I need to stop anticipating what's going to happen. I'm getting better at this. I think about a communitron, but you know, communitrons aren't exactly necessary yet, and I don't have power sources. It'd just be a waste of power. So I skip it because I can step out of the capsule and grab things. And of course, the name change, an all-important part of naming a spacecraft. Now, I just take Jebediah on this mission. I have an extra pilot that I could be training up, but it's just a basic mission. I might as well just fly alone into orbit, and it's a simple mission, not going to take much work. I double-check Planet Shine settings to make sure I have all the ambient light set properly, and I decided not to edit this out because I'm silly. But we'll keep it, it's fine. And it's only after I launch that I realize that the winglets are a bit wrong, but, you know, that's normal. I grabbed the science here because I can get out of the rocket and pick it up and put it in the capsule. So I do that, and that's what I forgot the next time. So I grabbed that, and I put it in the capsule, and it's a good bit of science. I only need about 4 more. I'm sitting at about 41 science. I only needed about 4 more to unlock another tier or something, and I believe, and this alone would have been enough, but I decided to do the full mission because every bit of science helps, and there's so much science to get just by EVA reports, I might as well do that. So the magnetometer scan works great, and then I go to the launch. I forgot to mess with the staging again. It's my fault. Staging's silly. And there we go, the main engine's firing with it. And the lack of the AVR8 makes it a bit of a fiddly launch. I should have used the orbital science design that I had before, which I believe switched to the AVR8s, but I didn't. I used the 2-orbit maybe. Or was it orbit maybe? It was one of those two. But I used that instead, and it just makes for a slightly silly launch. Now, again, I'm mainly using pilots until I actually can start using SAS without having a pilot on board, because really SAS is going to make almost all of these launches easier, which is also part of why I'm not launching the probe network until I know that I have a working SAS probe. And I am running low on money at this point. Money is a bit in short supply. Most of that is because of a number of failed missions at the beginning and a sort of slow-going process here later on. So we'll be pushing to get a decent amount of contracts out to get us money. So I need to stop saying so. Of course, this turning part of a mission is the gravity turn, because I don't have the winglet control, is a bit slow. And I also need to keep in mind how to change up the winglet positions and everything so that when I actually switch to larger SRBs, they don't kill my engine. Because if my engine gets destroyed on an early launch, that is going to kill this playthrough easily, because I'll be running out of money and I'll have to take out loans or something. And yeah, it's a smooth launch. I need topics to talk about when I have nothing else to talk about. Space. That picture of the moon, dark side of the moon, yes, the dark, yeah, it's an interesting picture, I say, having very little idea what I'm trying to say here. I feel like labeling it as the dark side of the moon is part of what makes it difficult for people to understand that it is actually the moon. Because people think it's actually in the dark, which is strange, but yeah, it's interesting that that's our first image of that side of the moon. You'd think we'd have more, but I suppose it would make sense that all the landings would have been while the near side was in daytime, so that way you can actually see what you're doing, and you can get signals back to Earth. So, yeah, I guess I'm probably a few days late on that one. Just, I find it interesting. Not as interesting as, say, the Pluto flyby, or all that other stuff. But, you know, it's there. And there's not much to talk about at this early point in the game, because, really, this is a pretty simple mission. I really should edit more of this out. I probably will next time, but right now, I'm a bit too lazy to do more editing before I do this voiceover again. Because, really, I don't want to deal with that. It takes a while to start up a voiceover and do editing and stuff, and my editing software is subpar at best. So I grab the science that I gathered on the launch, and I get an EVA report from the upper atmosphere, and of course it gives me the warning of, it would be a PR nightmare, and things like that. And, yeah, circularization, just as smooth as the launch. I get all the mystery goo science I need on the way out, and I begin to circularize, which is a simple enough task. Or maybe I get space over the ocean science first, because it's just a tiny bit of extra science. Every bit of science I can get here will help, because the more science I get, the more higher level stuff I can get. As soon as I can get electrics, that's going to be great, because electrics not only give us solar panels, but also an SAS probe. And I actually end up using solar panels later for I have this interesting design for getting science around the Space Center before I have rover wheels, and instead of like making a little jet-powered car thing, I make this giant like rolling thing, like what are they called? The Hailfires from Star Wars. It's kind of like that, except the entire body rotates. It's great. And it works as a nice little rover type thing. Gets me around the place easily enough. It's a bit fiddly to steer, and you need solar panels on it. And in many cases, you need to upgrade something so that you can maneuver it better. Or so you can get enough solar panels and, control, or SAS modules and everything to actually control it. So I decided to do a full, or close to a full orbit. It doesn't end up being a full orbit. And the main idea of this is that every time I pass over a new biome, I would grab a tiny bit of science from it. Not a large amount, but enough to kind of tick up and give me the science I need in the long run. And so I just keep going around and around and getting all this science. It's a simple task. I mean, there's not much else to say about it, other than it's simple. And I do miss a few biomes. Science alert is good for knowing when the biomes are there, but it's a bit fiddly at times, and it's actually helped me find some anomalies in the biome mapping, which we'll see later. And I slow down because I'm coming over land, and so I'm gonna hit some biomes, so I'm gonna be ready to pick up the science there and put it in and all that stuff. And of course, this peninsula offers very little, other than a quick flash of something. And oh yes, this is where I decided to turn towards retrograde, for no apparent reason, because I forgot, wait, I'm going to be deorbiting at the other side of the planet, and at that point, I will be facing prograde. So, could have thought it through a bit more then, which is why I turned off SAS, realizing that I was being silly. And I'm gonna do most of this with SAS off, because I still don't have any way to make electricity, and life support is important, and maneuvering is important. So, yeah, life support is something I can add onto ships, but I still don't have the VAB upgraded, and because of that, it's kind of difficult to spare the slots, when I could be putting science experiments on to get more science and get more stuff out of that. Now, a good option for getting more money would indeed, and I'm just talking way ahead of schedule, because I know exactly how much money I have left. I actually recorded this today and decided to voice, and had some quiet time later that I could actually do this voice stuff. But I know how much money I've got left, and it is not much. It's not enough, I think, to launch. Could it be? It might be enough to launch the probes, but I think I might need to upgrade the VAB to be able to design my probe rockets. And I don't think I can afford that anytime soon, but an option would be difficult because I don't have the parts for it. I could do well, I could go around, since I have electrics now. Spoiler alert, I get electronics. It's not that difficult. I actually get a lot of science on this episode. But I could use the science to get at least some basic aircraft parts. The parts that I don't want to use because they're so bad at breaking. I hope they fixed it. I really don't know. I should test it. And I could use that science and go in and unlock aircraft parts for the purpose of doing visual surveys, because visual surveys tend to provide a lot of money for a relatively simple mission. It would basically be, I go in and fly a plane for a while, a long while. I'll probably fast forward through most of the plane flying, or do jump cuts, or whatever. But, yeah, that might be a situation where I'd start, like, setting up some sort of spreadsheet of what to talk about. And here I just grabbed the mountain science, because that's the easiest mountain range to hit on the orbital path I'm planning. So the goal here is to deorbit into the nearby desert. I sort of miss. Again, spoiler alert, I need to quit saying what happens. I decide to wait, because I'm used to burning too much and cutting short, so I decided to wait a bit longer and just do a slight burn to slightly lower my periap, so I'm just in the atmosphere, and then do the rest of the burn once I've arrived, so I get a more specific, I want to slow down here. It lets me travel further and get further, but it's entirely based on the fact that usually when I'm doing burns like this, I have a lot more fuel. A lot more fuel. And in this mission, I forget that I don't have that. And so I enter the atmosphere, and I'm like, alright, I'm over a point that I'm happy with now. I'm happy to land around here. Ish. Eventually I'll do it. And I start the burn. And I'm out of fuel. I forget that I have so little fuel, I just drop it because I'm not being stupid and trying to land the engine this time. And this is where I realize, you know, this isn't gonna work. I'm gonna miss. I'm gonna hit the ocean. And this is also where I realized that you shouldn't ×4 time warp while doing SAS towards retrograde. Takes me a while to figure it out. And I'll just say it now, 4 times time warp is not my friend. I use it just to speed things up. I really should just speed it up in in editing, because I've had 4 times time warp be less than happy with me most of the time. I'll probably do most things then. But I hear a sort of explosion sound, which is the engine and the fuel tank released and exploding. And that is my fatal error. I tried to adjust my heading while at 4 times time warp. It doesn't work, and my parachute is destroyed. This mission is not in the best of positions. Jebediah is flying down with no way to slow himself down. He has tons of science on him. He missed the ground, so he's going to hit the ocean, so it's even more unforgiving. Although I do have better buoyancy, so it may be his survival. But I don't think it's going to be a spoiler warning for anyone. He doesn't survive. And, again, I'm following the rule of I'm not going to cheat and reload. So, Jebediah Kerman is dead. Because I tried to maneuver at 4 times time warp during a re-entry procedure with deadly re-entry installed. It wasn't smart, and it ended badly. So, all that science, and more specifically, and more importantly, all the money I had on this mission is gone. And that crippled me. I had enough money afterwards to launch another mission, so it's all fine. I can launch another mission. It's not like I'm totally dead in the water. In which case, I would just go into the save file and add in enough money to get started again. Not much more, just enough for that. That's all I need. Any more is just excessive and cheaty, but I don't want this series to die because I made a stupid mistake. Especially not die on like the 3rd episode. Because that's not how you do YouTube. So, the landing ends in death. And I just look over the whole thing that I can't read because of this preview being 12p. Yeah, great resolution, thanks. And, yeah, instead of reloading, which I might have done, I decided, no, I'm just gonna go back to the Space Center and launch a different mission. Plus, I now have more astronauts and I can afford to step back and do that. So, I go back, and this time, I know what I did wrong in the design for the launch. So the first thing I do is I replace the fins, because they need replacing. It was too difficult to do the gravity turn with the wrong fins. And I changed the pilot because it automatically sets Bill, I believe. Or it might be Bob, it's probably Bob. It's the engineer one, I don't remember if it's the engineer, and I feel like a horrible human being for that. I look at science stuff, nothing much to add, so I just stick with what I've got, with the AVR8 switched in to give a bit more maneuverability. I forget to change staging on this, and, well, yeah, it's not much of an issue, it doesn't kill me, it just makes it a bit silly. And I don't change the name, it's still the same craft, just with a tiny change, but I do save it, I believe, and I launch, and skip loading times. There's a long loading time on every one of these launches. Actually, on even going to the VAB or Spaceborne Hangar, or basically anywhere it has to load anything. Huge loading time. It's kind of due to the extremely long mod list. So I sort of skip those, because no one wants to see those. Who wants to see loading times? I don't. And so I do a slight change to my staging order. I'm sure most of you will figure out why that is a fatal staging order. Now, what I usually do in my launch is I fire up my central engine shortly before my SRBs cut out. And so I do that, but I put my main engine on my SRB separation stage, rather than on its own stage, so the SRB is fired off while still going. It's not gonna kill me, it's just a bit funny and kind of scary at the time. Of course, same mission this time. I've got 2 goo canister things to do. Simple mission, easy to do. And I also want to land in the desert. And this time I know what my mistake the last time was, and I won't make that mistake. So, this Kerbol, whose name I forgot, I believe it starts with an L and has like 2 R's or something? Like Loera or something? I don't know. Her, whoever it is a pilot, newly recruited, no experience, so this is our first flight, and the first flight is going to be the flight where my most experienced, similar to flight my most experienced pilot died on. Also, ignore the random background noises. I really don't know where they came from. I just heard them randomly. There will be another one coming in any moment now. There you go. It's a bit weird. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm trying to figure out a lot of things with this mod pack because apparently I can't update KW. And I'd also like to use B9 Aerospace, but I'm sure B9 Aerospace is not currently updated to 1.0 at all. And I mean, there is a version, but last I used it, it was fiddly, being a developer version, and the nodes didn't work properly and stuff like that, and it just made it unusable. So I'm sticking without it for now. Plus, I'm not the best at aircraft. I'd rather not have a whole other catalog of aircraft parts that I'm just not going to be able to use. I'd rather be able to learn how to use the stock ones. Because I've used them before, but only on the old stock aerodynamic model. It's good to have an actual aerodynamic model outside of FAR, but I just have never gotten good at building FAR aircraft. So, I'll be working on that, but it may be a varying degree of success. And you can probably figure out this mission goes smoother, because I'd be very upset if it failed like this, and I wouldn't be so calm about talking about it, likely, although, who knows, And I get a decent amount of science, and there I get the warning again about the PR nightmare, but I gather the science because I just finished a burn. It's upper atmosphere, there's very little atmosphere, I'm not gonna die. So, we just gather some stuff and get back in. And this time I actually take the stuff out of the thermometers, and I believe, no, I didn't use the magnetometer yet. I forgot to use the magnetometer and thermometer on the ground stage, which is part of why I mumbled earlier. And I only realized it when I was rewatching this. I could have gotten that tiny bit of extra science, but I'll be launching a mission specifically for gathering science in probably the next episode, and that'll be science all around the KSC, so that'll be useful. This orbit burn goes fine, as usual. I rarely have issues with orbit burns. Later I may, because I've used these ridiculous contraptions using the magnetoplasma dynamic engines. Wait, is it those? Yeah, from Near Future Tech. And one of them, I had a giant spacecraft that required like the biggest thing I'd ever constructed to even get it into orbit. But from there, I had to use, it of course had very low thrust, but it dropped back down into the atmosphere, and I managed to skim it off and back into orbit. But that, I won't be doing those for a while. I don't have Near Future Tech, at this point in the game. I will later, and I'll be doing all sorts of stuff with tugs. I do enjoy tug designs. Space tugs are useful, and I'll probably have some sort of ferry system to connect between, the moon and Kerbin, because I tend to find that the moon will be a good location. But we're going to use MKS OKS to design an orbital outpost that runs on TAC life support and has fully, stable life support, and we'll use that as a staging post. But it'll have a whole logistics network of connecting the different outposts. And of course, since we're colonizing, we need to be able to get resources around easily. And that's part of why we need logistics outposts in places like near Kerbin orbit. I don't know. I might make a fuel depot be a separate structure. Because space stations are laggy. We all know that. They're going to... If I have everything in one station, it could probably kill the game easily. I could have a life support station, and then nearby, like, just out of... Yeah, there's something I could do. It would take some save file editing, but I'd want to do it just for the sake of having it. But what I would do is I would have the fuel depot be out of load range from the life support station, and so but it wouldn't be so far that it would be impossible to reach. You'd just have a tiny bit of fuel to get there, and then you dock separately with the fuel depot and get extra fuel out. That would be a good idea. I'm probably gonna do that. And since since the orbital station will serve as a node for communications, it can also, well, a minor node. It'll be able to send communications to the fuel depot and have that be entirely automated. So there's an idea. I'm probably gonna do it. And, of course, it's going to be save file editing. So, but every time a spacecraft docks with the... Yeah, KSP can be fiddly at times, but I'm hoping that that would work. I'm gonna try and make it work, and basically it just involves keeping things as accurate as possible so they don't overlap too much. But having them just out of range of each other would be perfect for maintaining... It should be more than just out of range. It should be that when I pass halfway, it changes in between, because otherwise we'll have, like, you're just beyond the first station and the second station's loaded and you're, like, really lagging as you travel in between. I just don't like playing with lag. I could have them be one structure. Having a separate fuel depot just sounds fun. I don't know. Alright, so here I've gathered all the science again, and I begin to plan my re-entry burn. And this time I know how to actually burn down. I decide, no, I'm not going to do 2 separate burns, that's a stupid idea. So I point retrograde, and I believe I'll wait a bit longer. And yeah, there's me pointing retrograde. Aren't I great at this? I believe I'll wait a bit longer to get closer to the desert border, just to avoid overshooting. Because I've overshot way too much in the past. But here I just start burning and do the full burn, I think in one go. Yep, one full burn all the way down. And it has me going into this little gulf. I won't land in the gulf. I'm sure everyone here who's played the game knows that. I'm gonna slow down enough because of re-entry friction, and I'm gonna land on desert. So, I try to grab space over desert EVA report, but I don't have enough height over it. I missed it the last time, which is why I tried going for it again. It's a bit of a pointless thing to go for, but you know, a tiny bit of science extra. And this re-entry starts fairly early. And a few little temperature gauges in there, and some anomalous sounds, which I probably just figured out what they were. They were probably the engine. But a few things like that, they make me wonder, and so, warning, there are bright lights coming up. I apologize. I was worried, and the only way I could think of to check if the internal core of the service bay thing was in one piece was to go through the heat shield. While the heat shield is fluorescent yellow, or orange, or whatever color that is. It's orange, definitely. I'm just silly. And so temperature gauges pop up. I'm glad there's no memory leak on those anymore. They're useful. And just keep dropping into the desert. Now, the desert is one of those biomes that's easy to reach, but there's the explosion that I wondered about. I'm pretty sure it's the engine that I dropped earlier. But I was confused, so I decided, is it the parachute? No. Is it the thermometers? That's the crew hatch. I'm silly. There's the thermometers. No, it's not. That thermometer's fine, and that one's fine. The only thing I could think of is the central core of the service module thing. And the only thing I can think of to see that is to go through the heat shield and look at it. And it works. It's just silly, you know. But I push in, and everyone's blinded because it's as bright as the sun. And okay, it's fine, I zoom out and run away because that hurt my eyes even just watching it. And yeah, re-entry goes fine enough. It's I forgot what I was talking about beforehand. I apologize, I just had a complete lapse of thought. The parachute survives this one. Just fine. And all the science is fine. Ah yes, that's what I was talking about. The desert is one of the more difficult biomes to hit, or it's one of the biomes that you don't usually get, but it has some science for it. The only other one, and I actually got one strangely, tundra, while on an equatorial orbit. A biome mapping glitch, but the other one that's difficult to get on a regular basis is the, polar biome, or the Arctic biome, or whatever it's called. I will likely launch a mission just to get there, but have some sort of test in the suborbital trajectory thing for that as well. Because getting to the poles and getting stuff from there is very useful. So that'll be a goal. I don't want to fly there, that's unnecessary, and I don't have the ability to really make an aircraft like that yet. Now, remember what happened last time with the heat shield? Well, I expect it to happen this time. And it does happen. So what I decided to do is get rid of the heat shield. Because I don't want to deal with it skidding around. It's funny, but the more it skids around, the more likely it is that I don't land in the desert. So here it is sort of messing with the trajectory again. So I try to get it off, and then I flip upside down to toss it upwards, because it's somehow falling slower than I am. Now that it's a separate object, I just stabilize myself, and there we go. Release the SAS, and just drop down to the surface. From here, it's simple. It's hard to fail at this point in the mission. It was a smooth mission. Entirely smooth. Nothing went wrong, really, except for that release at the beginning of the mission with the SRBs, which was a minor problem. It didn't cause any damage, it just was a bit wasteful. No harm done through it. But other than that, the entire mission goes fine. Nothing goes wrong, and I'm moderately amazed by that. Yeah, just a simple landing. You've all seen this before. Just parachute. I'll cut it out next time. But I want you all to feel the pain of me sitting here and watching it happen. As I slowly drop to the surface. At 4 times normal speed, but still feeling so slow. Of course, it has the parachute. And yeah, landing goes fine. I get some extra science from, being above the desert. It's desert biome, plenty of science here. And since I completed my 2 contracts, there's some money in it all. Landing, then that's what I could do. I could upgrade the mission control and get more contracts to basically use them as loans. But yeah, lots of science here. Glad I have the magnetometer, so I extend that and use the Science Junior and get the EVA report. And I keep getting the report things while outside of a craft, so that's fun. So I actually forget to do the EVA report. Or actually, I clicked the button, but it didn't respond, and I thought it did because I clicked out, and I really just click out so quickly on this stuff. I'd go ahead and read the thing so I know what's happening. And then, of course, there's the EVA report on the ground. To just fill out every bit of EVA reports and everything that I can get yet. Don't have surface samples yet. The R&D lab will be the last thing I upgrade in order, because it's not as necessary as everything else for the early game. It's basically upgrading the R&D lab is your transition from the early to the late, or from the early to the mid game. And then the last upgrade on that is mid to late. It's the transition. It's not necessary to progress within that portion of the game. Whereas upgrading to upgrading your mission control and tracking station gives you patched conics and your node planning. I apologize, everyone. I thought I got all the load times. Okay, so that mission went fine. I'll cut out every load time next time. I promise. No one wants to see load times. That was a short one. That's the bad part. So, I get 100 science off of that mission, which brings me up to about 140. Enough to buy a 90 upgrade, so I buy electric so I can actually make a probe network. And I buy advanced rocketry because of that larger fuel tank, and more importantly, the SRBs are a key part of my early game orbital service craft. They're larger and provide the thrust that you need for heavier payloads. So, it's just overall a very good investment, especially at this point in the game. So, yep, simple purchase there. And have all the science. We'll use it next time, possibly to get more science and go to the polls and everything. We check some contracts. We have the remote tech contract, so we'll be getting that. And we have a flyby Minmus, but we also have some orbital surveys. We'll just do whatever we can for money now because we have 90,000. I'm gonna go now because this is getting long, and I'm done here. Goodbye.